I asked myself this question. I said, when you were 28 and you were working in the tobacco business, if this opportunity presented itself to you, would you have the same level of hesitation that you have right now?
And it's amazing when people come in here on crutches and they're in pain, or people that are so hopped up on pharmaceuticals and they come in here and they take a natural product.
I'm about to blow. I'm Tupac with the nouns and Biggie with the flow. Big boy with the style and Andre with the fro.
Welcome to the show, Avi and Josh. To kick things off, can you both share how you originally connected and kind of like what sparked the idea of working together in the botanical space?
Yeah. So it's funny. Me and Avi had been going to Grassroots since 2016. And so we actually never saw each other up until 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I was actually going through a hard time in my life, going through a lot of changes. And I was sitting on the bench of Grassroots, and Avi came over like the loving guy he is. And we started talking. Started to talk about life. He was there for me, and I was able to vent to him. And then we started talking about business and, what are you doing? What do I have going on? And we had a lot of similarities, and we had a shared vision. We're both doing big things, and there was that synergy there. We always make the joke, like, I got him a mug as a present, and it's the yin and yang mug. So we always make that joke. So we have the same morals and values and mission and drive, but we're different where we complement each other. So it ended up being a really good synergistic relationship. And I think over the course of a couple months, we started to hang out more, and he'd come see the facility, and we'd do things out of work, went and looked at a couple new warehouses. And this is before we worked together, kind of just
feeling each other out.
But before we even worked together, we were, going on business meetings together. He, wanted to see how I operated, and same. And so we spent a lot of time together, and then we kind of just kicked things off. One thing led to another, and there was an alliance there.
Yeah.
And it's been 2.5 years.
Going on
2.5. It
years.
feels like yesterday I was sitting on that bench crying to him.
You weren't crying. No. Actually, to add a little context there too, I was working as a freight broker at the time, and I was making the best money of my life, right? And when Josh proposed that I join the team, I had a hard time with it, right? Because I'm like, no, I've got all this. I built this book of business. I'm busting my ass. I'm making great money. But boy, do I love Cava and Kratom, right? And so I asked myself this question. I said, when you were 28 and you were working in the tobacco business, if this opportunity presented itself to you, would you have the same level of hesitation that you have right now? And I was like, no, I would have jumped in a heartbeat, right? And on top of that, one thing that Josh said, this is a vehicle, a forward-moving vehicle that gives us an opportunity to scale the business and make an unlimited amount of funds, right? Yeah. So it's about belief in myself, belief in Josh's vision and what we were doing, and knowing that when I get to cross my passion, Cava and Kratom being something that I've been interested in for 10 years, I can cross that with discipline, then the results will come. So that was one of the impetus. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, we would go around, we would meet with different clients or people that were going to build a new warehouse for us, because I wanted to get to know Josh. He's from St. Pete, and we've been going to Cava bars forever. And I swear to God, I know for a fact we've seen each other a million times, and we just never connected.
No.
And that just shows you how big the world is while being small at the same time.
Yeah, so it's funny because I've been in the business for 9 years, and in the first 5 years, I did a lot. I had to wear every hat. I was the accountant, I was the VP, I was packing the product out, I was selling it, I was shipping it, I was doing everything, and I was just getting burned out. But we also weren't bringing in enough money where I could buy back my time and hire really good people, because this guy's world class.
Thank you.
And so I prayed and prayed and prayed for years. And so this was 6.5 years I was on my own, and I had a team under me and we had a warehouse, but I was looking for somebody very, very special. And the second I knew Avi, I was like, he's the guy. This is the guy that we prayed for many years.
Yeah.
Love that.
So, and that's kind of the short story.
Yeah.
We've been together ever since.
I love that. So, Josh, you're more like the visionary, and then Avi's kind of more of like the logistics and almost like the operator in the business, if that's right.
No, I wouldn't say that. Avi came in as the VP, but he shortly took the role of, say, COO or even co-owner. Like, he does a lot of the same stuff that I do, and we collab pretty heavy. I have my things that work and he has his things that work, and we're both kind of driving the ball down the court. We need to be able to see into the future and predict what products are going to be hot, what marketing stuff we need to do.
Sure.
And it's constantly changing. I mean, we're constantly coming out with new products and redoing the trade show booth and figuring out new ways for our guys to sell, and, new KPIs and SOPs and everything. It's so fast moving in this business because if you don't change, you're going to get blown out quick.
Yeah, that's actually what we've seen in the last 9 months, is this dynamic and aggressive shift in the B2B side of things for us in our business. And so we had to make a hard pivot. We wear a lot of hats. We complement each other. That mug isn't a joke to me. It's on my desk. I think about it all the time. Because Josh is literally, he's one of a kind, right? When the alarm clock goes off in the morning, Josh gets out of bed with a level of enthusiasm I've just never seen. I remember our first trade show route when we went like Vegas, home, Vegas, and straight to Fort Lauderdale, back-to-back trade shows. I remember we were just destroyed on the flight down to Fort Lauderdale or Miami. Actually, we fell asleep. I had a neck pillow. I put it on our shoulders, and our heads were like this, leaning on each other.
We slept on each other.
We get to Miami, and we lay down in the hotel room for like 2 hours for a nap, and then he just gets up and go. And I was like, holy crap, I've never seen somebody with this energy. But his consistent positivity and energy is a gift. And, in a small business or a large business, a lot of times there's the owner of the company that sort of trails in at noon. Do as I say, not as I do mentality. That's not the case with Josh. And that was one of the most fundamental and important things for me when deciding to partner up with Josh and join the team, was that I want to know who he is as a person, right? Like, does he walk the walk that he talks, right? And he does. And so we bounce ideas off of each other. Sometimes we meet at Grassroots on the weekends to plan. We have daily meetings with the team. We're all in. So it's really fun. It's interesting. It never gets boring.
And it's easy to have energy when you do what you love, right?
Yeah. Sure.
This is a gift to be able to sell a product that we take, that is so near and dear to our hearts, that has completely changed my life, coming from being an alcoholic, right? In my early 20s and teens, and having a ton of bad things happen in my life from alcohol. We call it loser juice because we don't drink anymore. And so when we found out about Cava and Kratom 9 years ago, and we started drinking these botanicals, very seldomly, we didn't take it as much as we do now. So, but it was a good substitute, and we had this awakening and became passionate, and now it's helping our friends and it's helping our family. And so we love what we do. It's helped me, and now we get to help thousands of people. I mean, it's amazing when people come in here on crutches and they're in pain, or people that are so hopped up on pharmaceuticals, and they come in here and they take a natural product that is vegan friendly and organic, and it hasn't been adulterated, and they don't need the crutches. They're like, dude, I'm pain free for up to 5 hours. So it's that'll get you out of bed, right?
Yeah. 100%. So I think it's like, we kind of have to hit on the importance of finding that yin and yang with your business partner. Because I have heard too many stories of people kind of meeting. They're like, oh, I love your vibe. I love your vibe. It's like the first couple months of them kind of meeting each other. It's like getting in a relationship where you have that honeymoon phase for the first like 3 months.
Yeah.
Everything is great. You're just banging all the time, just doing all the things. And then next thing you know, they're like, true self kind of starts to show underneath, and their shadows start to come out.
Something real quick.
Yeah.
So I've had 2 business partners, and I've also been in 2 lawsuits over the past 9 years. And this was 5 years ago. So when I was 25 years old, I got sued by an ex-business partner. It was a bad dealing. I also like, I had animosity because, I started the company first. This person came in later. They didn't put as much time. They weren't bringing in the money that we needed to bring in. They weren't doing the things. They had another job. This was a part-time thing for them, and they had 50% equity. And so we were splitting it 50-50. I'm all in.
Yep.
And so there was a lot of animosity there. And so I was also immature at the time, the way that I went about it. And so I dealt with that for many years and had to pay these people off for the next 5 years. And I had that burden on my back. And then it happened again. I gave another guy equity that came in the company later on. Because I'm a man of my word. I said, hey, if you're with me for X amount, I will give you this. And they stuck with me through those hard times. And I did. And so it's like right when you give somebody the equity, because it wasn't the right fit, they were never the right fit. Yep. Same situation. They pull back. They don't know what to do. They don't want to put in the long hours. They're not making money. They get discouraged.
Yeah.
So I'm getting animosity. So point is I've been there, and I've had to learn the hard way through many, many years. And I've had to grow and mature and look at what I want in a partner. And so, yeah, it takes a lot. It's a lot of trial and error, and you have to come at it with love. Like, you know what I mean? Like we get frustrated with each other sometimes, but we walk in the next day with a smile.
Yeah.
We hug each other out. He comes up to me all the time, like when he knows I'm frustrated, and he'll just give me a hug. Yeah, and then when he's upset, I'll come greet him in the morning, and then we're all good. Yeah. And it never gets to that. Yeah. Because it's all love at the end of the day. And he has his thing that he does, and I have my thing, and they do complement each other. And we just have to talk about it. You have to sit down and talk about it and have the hard conversation, just like it's your spouse or your best friend. And you got to put it all on the table.
So, one thing I'll add to that is that I've told Josh this when I first came on board. I'm here to do excellent work. Okay. I'm not here to pigeonhole myself and say that's not my job. My mom's work ethic wouldn't allow that. I want to redefine the meaning of the word excellence in Josh's mind and in the mind of my team. That means that I want to take on new challenges, and I've made a commitment to my team that I will be a different version of myself a year from now, and 2 years from now, and 3 years from now. And I will continue to reinvent myself as a commitment to them, because the world that we're in is changing. So their leader needs to change. That means that I'm fallible. I'm going to make mistakes. And I didn't ask for partnership. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to do excellent work, period. Because I trust the character of Josh. I know that he's going to make sure I'm taken care of as long as I take care of him. He's the boss, okay? At the end of the day, that barrier gets respected. And when you talk about post-honeymoon stages with partnerships that feel right, a lot of times what ends up happening is one person's ego gets involved, and they start to think of themselves as the provider, doing more, or whatever the case may be. Or now that they've obtained some sort of title, some flimsy title, that they now are granted reprieve from the tasks they never wanted to do to begin with. That is not how it's supposed to be, right? It's in the trenches and it's on the mountaintops. We're supposed to be there for each other, fighting for each other, pushing each other to be better, calling each other out on our bullshit, but the ego gets checked at the door. And there's a big separation that people have between the necessary ego of this is how I feel good about myself and how I'm able to have confidence, and the ego that people use as a sword to attack undeserving people. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it is a big deal. It's a big deal, and it's an important part of growing as a human being, is keeping that in check. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because I know, like when I first started, my first year I was by myself. Second year, partnered with somebody that I met online. We were business partners for, oh man, I think 3 years. And then towards the end, it seemed like I was just putting in all this work. I cared so much about the success of the company, and they started kind of pulling back. So being able to have that yin and yang that you guys have is like that's huge. That is, it's really important.
Yeah. Keeps it healthy.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Josh, like you've built this company from scratch. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced in the early days?
I mean, when I grew up, I was the guy, my dad had me slaving around as a young child. And my dad owned a business and worked 7 days a week. And my mom did medical sales. So I grew up with that combination. And the combination of, you're never enough. And if you're not producing, you're worthless. And I was kind of bred into it. I've had a couple other companies when I was younger, but the Kratom found me. When I found out about Kratom 9 years ago, I was all in. I was hooked. And so I had another job. I was working here in St. Pete, but my territory was Dallas, Texas. So after a couple years with the investigation company, I went to Dallas and I said, let me get close. Who's got my money? I need to get close to my customers. So as I was out there, I started researching Cava bars and where can I find Kratom? Where is it? And there were no Cava bars back then. And I had never been into a smoke shop or a wholesale distribution. I didn't know where this stuff was sold. So it was sold in a smoke shop, right? So I start doing investigations. They were selling 1 ounce of Kratom for $30. At the time, I knew I could get a kilo of Kratom imported for $50. There's 35 ounces in a kilo. If I can give them 1 ounce for $10, they can make 200%, sell it for $30. And we've got a business here. Now I'm going to make $350 on a $50 investment. We can scale. So I literally started grassroots in a spare bedroom in a dingy apartment in Plano, Texas with $500. So I popped up a company, got the designs, got the bags made, got a couple kilos, and literally had a spoon and a cheetah hair straightener as the impulse sealer to seal the bag because we didn't know, now we have massive machines. I mean, you look in our clean room back here, we have everything you can imagine. But back then we didn't know how to seal the bag,
Yeah.
So I was doing everything by hand and going door to door for a year and a half after maintaining my full-time job. I still had to produce millions a year with these guys and work 9 to 5. And I had my big corporate meetings, at Liberty Mutual or Chubb International. So I worked with a lot of the big insurance companies. So after all that was done, I'd go home, I'd get my box of shit, and I'd go to these smoke shops till 10, 11 at night. And if I got orders, I'd come back home and pack out product till 3 a.m. And so, man, that's what we had to do in the beginning. And so some of the struggles for me is like leadership, having to wear all the hats and not being able to pay attention to certain departments because all I'm focused. If you don't have money coming in, you don't have a business. All I cared about was bringing in revenue. And I knew that I could work out the rest later. And so I think I messed around too long, just caring about the money and not bringing in these higher up people with the skills. And that was also a deficit with me in my ego. I don't want to hire someone that's better than me because how's that going to make me feel,
Yeah.
And so all these things with that ego death, like we're talking about, I went through all that and it was tough. And then one day you got to set that aside, and if you want to go quick, you go alone. If you want to go far, you have a team. So now I'm big on having a team, and it's ingrained in me, because it's all of us together, banding together for the same mission and the same purpose. And we have a killer team here. We've got 30 guys. And so we can crush anybody, and we can do a lot more than any individual out there.
Yep. Which is like the important part of it is having that killer team.
Yeah, you gotta have a team.
Looking back at my business, dude, I made so many mistakes when it came to hiring, and I don't think people realize how expensive it is to hire the wrong person. Cause it's not just the pay you're going to be losing. It's the time of training them. It's all the resources that you're investing into them and all of that. Like when it comes to hiring, what do you look for?
Yeah.
So you want to go on that?
Yeah. So
Avi does the hiring.
I'll tell you what, man. let me get this browser out of the way here. Snooze. All right. So what an awesome question. How do I look for the right candidates? So I'm going to tell you a funny story, and I'm going to try and be brief. But working in the tobacco business, I went through what is called a regime change. Okay. This happens in large companies where a new VP comes in, they fire all of the old team, and they bring on their cronies from their previous company. But the reason why that new VP came on board is because that just happened to them. So they just got whacked because, let's say, Philip Morris bought a smaller tobacco company, brings in one of their guys, guts the whole staff. That guy goes on to a new company, does the same thing to them. So I'm at this tobacco company, and we go through a regime change. I think we hired 13 people from one company all at once. We weren't a massive company by any means. We probably had 25 to 30 salespeople on the ground, a few regional managers, and a VP of sales. Me, I was at the time the in-between point between the marketing team and the sales team. So I was kind of like an executive assistant, but a little bit higher level than that. So I ended up having an interview because once we did the regime change, whoever didn't get fired left. They were like, screw this, I'm out. So we lost 11 salespeople. So I have to replace 11 salespeople all over the country. So I got really good at vetting resumes. I got really good at identifying what to avoid when, especially in the tobacco business, sometimes you do yourself a disservice by hiring another tobacco guy from another company because they come with a bunch of bad habits and expectations based on the brand that they carry. But the best people that I would hire, they came from beverage companies, beer, wine, Arizona iced tea, right? There's this guy, Reg, who blew me away on the interview. I still remember how that interview went. But what do I look for personally? One of the biggest questions that I ask people, probably not HR appropriate, is tell me about your hobbies. Okay? Hobbies, just like self-development, are the things that people fall back on when they get into tough times. So when I have somebody, and they could be 57, they could be 23, and they tell me, well, I like to play video games, and for fun, I like to go out with my boys and drink, right? Cool. Everybody likes that, right? Everybody has those types of hobbies. I'm not hiring them. I'm not going to do it. I don't care if you're 45 years old and the highlight of your life is that you collect bourbon. I'm not hiring you. That's not a hobby. Okay. Reg, who we hired in Texas, was probably in his late 50s. When I asked him what he did for hobbies, he says, I sing in the choir at my church. I am a referee for the NCAA. I coach my kids' he's got triplets. I coach my high school children's classes. There's sports that they do. And I go to the gun range. I'm like, wow, all right. Not only did this person have great demeanor, which for all intents and purposes, that's what you're supposed to bring to an interview anyways. Realistically, you don't know what you're going to get from somebody until they're 2 months in, right? Once they figure out, hey, I know how to do the job now, complacency is set in. If they tell you they have hobbies and that they're investing in themselves and others, they're a winner. Okay. Life is too short. And I've got some friends that, for a while would try to drive home the point, universal basic income is going to be a good thing for the world or whatever. And I pissed them off because I said, if you don't have hobbies now and you only work 40 hours a week, you'll never have them when you only have to work 10. This isn't a political commentary here, but as a person who used to work 80-hour weeks, all right, and I still do from time to time, I taught myself a second language, right? I kept myself fit and in the gym 4 days a week, and I've got a healthy social life. So when people tell me they can't learn the guitar, right, or they can't pick up a paintbrush and paint a picture because they're working 40 hours a week, I call BS on that. So the biggest thing I look for is character development in a person. If they have hobbies, great. I can work with them. If they're malleable, great. I can work with them. Everything can be trained. If you have it in sales, if the person that I'm talking to presents the charm, charisma over the other side of the table, then all it is a matter of word tracks. All it is a matter of positive thinking and thinking about different scenarios, how to obtain the real objection. That can all be taught. Anything on the planet that you want to become proficient in can be taught. So as a leader, it's only a question of how patient am I? How many mental and emotional resources am I willing to spare for this new member of the team to get them up to speed? The right character, the right heart is the right employee. It's just a matter of how much training they need. So that's the biggest thing for me. If somebody shows me that they lack integrity, but they're a killer salesperson, I don't want them. They're going to disrupt the flow and the culture. And we've had those. We've learned from that. And I've had this one person in particular was one of the most talented people in phone sales that I've ever heard, but he didn't have integrity. And so myself and the rest of the team would step on his landmines that he would lay for us because he'd be slitting his teammate's throat. The company's not structured in a way that you would even have to do that. But that was the type of person he was. So, yeah, that's really the most important thing, right?
No, I love that. Yeah, because integrity especially is super important. I have a buddy who lives in St. Pete. He had a salesperson on their team, and they would just say the wildest stuff to get these people to pull the trigger and make the sale. And then all of a sudden, anybody that this person closed, like the close rate was 30%, but the refund rate was like 70%. So integrity is
those are the landmines.
That's the one, dude.
The aftermath.
Yeah, that's the one. Yep.
We dealt with it big time.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
in
you
sales,
both.
What's
what was that?
I was just going to say that in sales, when you're talking to a prospect in our line of work, what you need to ask yourself is this: when they hang up the phone with you, do they breathe a sigh of relief, like, "Oh, thank God I'm off the phone with Mike," right? Or do they go, "Wow, I enjoyed that conversation. I could have sat there and talked for 5 more minutes." You have two options when you talk to people, right? You want them to feel interesting after you hang up the phone. Not that you're interesting, but they feel cooler after talking to you. It's a big part of this.
That's huge. That's a very good perspective.
Going back to your last question, you don't know what you don't know. Everything is trial and error. Everything that we've ever done is learning from mistakes. Like, dude, we didn't have mentors in our lives. We have to seek out the online mentors. We don't have anybody physically. I know my dad was not a mentor for me. He was not a role model, so I always sought that out. And so the people that were role models that I thought were role models to me, guess what? When they figured out I was going to open up that business, that's not a good idea. I don't believe in that. You shouldn't go do that because it was going to take away from them, right? Or whatever it may be.
Naysayers.
Naysayers.
Like Alex Hormozy talks about that. Everybody was on board with him when he was sleeping in the gym, but the moment he made it big, it was like, oh.
So hiring, right? We've gone through 50 guys. We've seen it. We've developed patterns. We know what to look for and what not to look for now. The way you act, the way you manage the team, it's all been trial and error. And then you get to a certain baseline and you're smooth. But there's always people throwing curveballs at you. It's never a dull moment in here. Ever. It's never the job, it's the people.
Yeah.
Always.
Oh, for sure. I completely agree. One thing that Andy one thing that really hit what he said is like, you both created a company culture that gives people opportunities they might not have otherwise. Like, was this intentional from the start, or did this kind of develop naturally as the business grew?
So, when I was at this specific company, I'm not going to mention, I made the owner millions of dollars for many, many years. And when I went and asked for them to cut my salary, take my salary and give me just a 10% commission, they said no. And they laughed in my face. So then I shortly quit thereafter. And so I made a vow to myself that we were going to be the highest paying company with whatever, Kratom chose us, but we could have started any company. It didn't matter. We just happened to get into this line of business. And I made a vow to myself. We said, we're going to give people a real opportunity. And we did. And the people that we hired, especially the people that we hired in the beginning, you need a certain type of person. Unfortunately, you need somebody that doesn't have a lot of bills. Maybe somebody that lives with their mom and dad, someone that doesn't have a lot of debt, someone that wasn't making a lot of money anyways. They had the skill. No one ever poured into them, because it's not anymore. We provide salary plus commission now, but the first 10 guys that we brought on over the first 5 years that stuck, that are still with us, they're on straight commission.
Feast or famine.
Feast or famine, eat what you kill. And so we made sure that was, 30%, 35%.
Yeah.
And so we've changed things since, because it's when you're scaling, it's not the smartest thing for the business. And they know, we have to reinvest in product and equipment and R&D, and we have to hire employees, and we can't be giving away 35% of the farm. It just doesn't,
no.
we won't stay in business.
So, yeah, I mean, just to add that one thing, that dynamic Josh said when he first started the first crew of salespeople, right? What worked there, that dynamic worked because they didn't have debt, they didn't have overhead, they were hungry, they maybe had some of the aptitude, right? But they could deal with the ebbs and flows. Going from something like that to still a very robust compensation plan, but with a base salary, means that if we pick 10 people, we can get 5 successes there. We can pull from a higher pooling caliber, right? Yeah. Instead of, if we pick 10, we get 2, right? Because not many people, let's say fresh out of college, young, energetic, and malleable, are going to say, well, yeah, I'll be okay making $0 this week, but next week it's okay to make $1,500. I think we just lost you. Oh, you still there? Can you hear us?
Technical difficulties.
Can you hear me? What does that say? Uploading. Mike, can you hear us? I can see you. Mike.
Oh, weird. I cannot see you guys.
All right.
You there?
Yo.
Can you try leaving and coming back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yo.
There we go.
Oh. All right. Cool.
We're
you
back.
Can hear us. All right. Awesome.
Perfect. I can cut that out. It's no problem.
All right. So, what were we just talking about? Basically
Pay structure.
Yeah. Changing the pay structure, still having it as competitive as it is, allows us to pull from a higher pool, basically, and have a higher success rate. Because the feast or famine thing works with certain niche personalities, but not everybody. And as the industry shifts, which it has, it's become a lot more competitive too. So the saturation of the market is there. Consumer packaged goods is the overall industry term used to describe what we do. So once you close a customer, for instance, and they've been successful with the products, you'll get the same commission on every reorder. Those reorders will happen on their own, essentially. Obviously, you have to go and make sure that they're pricing it appropriately. If there's anything changing, you make the changes. You have to build the relationship. But consumer packaged goods compensation structures, for instance, are usually salary with a bonus potential of maybe 10 to 30% of your annual salary. That's across the board. So most people doing what we've got these guys doing cap out at $65,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. That's it. For somebody like M&M Mars or Coca-Cola or whatever the case may be, unless you climb the corporate structure. So it's very unique within CPG. And our competitors pay a base and do 5% of revenue in the smoke shop segment, like we compete in. That's the standard, and we've got up to 22% of revenue for our products.
And we've got guys that were making $8-10 an hour. Some people working in the restaurants now doing $250,000 plus, and most of our veterans are doing really, really good. And they're just getting started, right? They're only bringing in 1.2, 1.3 million. I mean, they could do 5, 6, 10 million easily. I mean, they're just getting going. The sky's the limit.
Exactly.
Love that. No, that's huge. Do you guys do like, I know I'm looking at it like the cigar lounges that I go to, and they'll have like almost like a sponsor person come in from a specific cigar company. They'll kind of hand out free cigars. If somebody buys a bundle, they'll give them a couple free ones. Do you guys do anything like that when it comes to like sending your reps out to these smoke shops?
Yeah, it's called a tabling. So we do weekly or monthly tablings depending on, where the store is. And we also set up shop in the distribution. So the distributor, right? You've got 3 distributors in Tampa, and they service a certain area, right? They've got 100-mile vicinity. And so all those stores are going to the distributor. The distributor is going to spend $150,000 with you, right? A month. All these stores we need to go out and market to now and build the demand grassroots, store by store. Once they buy, we push them to the wholesaler, and then they start buying from the wholesaler. That way you're just dealing with one big whale per city, right? Or 2 or 3 instead of 100 smoke shops.
Yeah.
You don't want to be tied up doing all this, dealing with 100 accounts and the headaches. You just want to go after the big boys.
Yep.
100%. I used to sell cannabis, and it was great selling the little dime bags and 20 sacks and stuff like that. But then I just started focusing on people that would just come and pick up a pound and different things like that. And it was way easier, less transactions, around the same amount of money.
A little bit, 30% cheaper. They need to make a 30% margin at the distro level, sometimes 20, sometimes 3, depending on if it's tobacco.
Sure.
But the volume is there, right? So it makes up for the loss in margin.
It's a great way to scale the business and not get mired in the muck.
And so
100%.
when we're in every state, Kratom is legal, over 50 states. And there's 46.
So there's 7 states where Kratom's illegal, but Cava is legal all 50.
So we're everywhere we can be. And the laws are always changing every day. So we're everywhere we can be. We have a distributor in every major hub. And the product is it's getting spread out. And it's good because those distributors, they have trucks. They have guys, sales reps that are on the road now selling your stuff.
Yep.
While you're sitting back, the brand has energy. It's still moving. Customers are talking about it, right?
Which is huge. Like that's word of mouth, and just getting stuff to kind of spread that way can exponentially grow a business.
The organic demand.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
So now, Avi, your personal story is pretty powerful, from struggling with some bad habits to becoming a leader and a role model. Can you kind of walk us through that pivotal moment when you realized that you needed to change?
Sure. Well, I didn't really get to know my dad until I was 20. I had met him a few times growing up. Obviously, like, my mom would make an effort to let me spend an evening with him on the weekends. My dad is not a bad man. I have a great relationship with my mom and my dad. They're amazing. But that's something that I had to grow into. My mom was a superwoman. Okay. Single mom. I played violin for 12 years. She homeschooled me until 8th grade. I did Brazilian jiu-jitsu and karate my whole childhood, right? But at some point in time, you become a teenager, you start making bad choices. So obviously I kind of wanted to go on, do my own thing. So I put down all those beneficial things we talked about, and I was getting high every single day for years. And I was a failing student. I was single loner. My friend groups, these were my brothers, we grew up together, had become toxic. People were snorting pills or smoking pills, things like that. And I don't know. I was kind of at a loss. A rift was starting to form. Obviously, I was participating in a lot of ways in those bad behaviors, but I really, there was a clash there because I know how hard my mom wanted me to become an upstanding citizen. And I know what my mom wanted for me, and I knew that I was throwing that out the window. So I think Andy may have told you this, but on the eve before I drove from Florida to New York to spend a month with my biological father for the first time in my life, I took a bunch of hits of LSD, and I had done mushrooms, LSD, many many times. Every single time I would drive the car, I was like the tour guide for people, to make sure people had a good experience. But that one was a heavy dose for me, and I drove from Florida to New York with no GPS. This was 14 years ago. Okay, and took me a lot longer to get there than it should have because I got lost a few times. But that whole drive, I contemplated where I was at. Why was I depressed? Why was I not happy? What was I doing? I was betraying myself. My integrity was out the window. I was lazy and entitled. I was a complainer. I'm an unrecognizable version of myself today from the people who knew me then. They would not know they were standing next to the Avi that they used to hang out with. Plain and simple. And all of the people in my life today know me only as this version. And so there's a lot of assumptions where it's like, oh, well, you've always been good with people, or you've always had good work ethic, or this and that and the other thing. People want to simplify everything in life into a two-dimensional box when it may not be that way. But regardless, I make this drive. I spend the month with my dad. And then after that month, I quit smoking cigarettes. I quit smoking weed, quit doing drugs. I got Dean's List in college, got a girlfriend, moved out of the house, started working out. So some people could say, maybe it was that trip on LSD that made the change, and maybe it was, or maybe it was just hard work. But I think it was the two things in tandem that allowed me to become somebody that I'm proud of. And when Josh mentioned earlier, like, we didn't really have mentors, it's true. Working in different roles, the mentors that we should have had, they themselves were kind of broken. So looking up to a broken man or a woman for guidance every day is going to put you on a bad path. So for me, my mentors are, this is cliche at this point, but they're David Goggins, Jocko Willink, they're, Simon Sinek, and all these people whose books I read at a young enough age that were able to make an impact on me in my life personally and professionally. So when we talk about the importance of being a leader versus a manager, like, these things are very near and dear to my heart. And what I want to be for people, at the least, is somebody who's always positive, okay? Yeah. Somebody who just raises the bar 1 or 2%. But for those that I'm really actively involved in, I would like to be their mentor. And it's not an ego thing, but I want to be somebody worth looking up to. I want to be somebody that if someone were to emulate me in my decisions and my actions, it would improve their life. It's not just about money, it's not just about respect or the nice things in life. It's how to get through the tough things too. And that was a very pivotal moment in my life. But I've had many since then, and the last 14 years of my life have been a gift. Yeah. And I hope to have that for the next 44 years.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because his name means father of many.
Yeah.
In the Bible. And so my middle name is Joel and my last name Sutherland. And so what did Joel do? He led people to the promised land. And what does Sutherland mean? It means man of the South. I live in the South Side. Yeah. So we're living in our purpose fully. It's pretty crazy. And we just found that out.
Yeah. Avi is a nickname. It's actually a Hebrew nickname for Abram. And Abraham. So that's where we get that from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
dude,
people that are close to me, they call me Avi. And in the business world, normally I introduce myself as Abram, because Avi is a little harder to grasp for people because there's Javier or Harvey or Ozzy. It's messed up in any number of ways imaginable, But yeah, so I have two names,
Yeah.
I love that. No, that's huge. I can relate a lot to your story, just from everything that I've kind of gone through. I only seen my dad. We'd seen each other more often when I was like younger, probably up until like 6 or 7. And then it started going to once a year, which my birthday is December 22nd. So I'd go there the 23rd through the 25th. and then come home to my mom's, spend time there for Christmas, and just kind of not see my dad again for another year. And then when I got older, turned 16, got my license, was able to actually have a relationship with him because I'd drive over to his house and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we just found it like we just kind of smoked weed with each other. Kind of that's how we bonded and was relatable. And mine wasn't an acid trip, but I was sitting there. I just took a huge rip of the bong and I was watching YouTube. And then I got hit with an ad from Ty Lopez. And he was talking about like knowledge and mindset. And I'm like, where the fuck am I going in my life?
Yep.
Like, what is going on? And I ended up going to Barnes and Noble and I found the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. And that book completely changed my life.
That's awesome.
That was almost 14 years ago. 11 years ago.
So, I think people, religion is as old as time. Okay.
Yep.
From the first tribal warlord who decided he could gain control over the other tribes by telling people what happens when they die. This theme of the Roman Catholic Church saying, you want to go to heaven, sure, you've lived as a pauper your entire life, but if you give us your life savings, you'll go to the pearly gates when you die. We don't really know. I'm religious, or I should say I'm spiritual. I'm very accepting of every major religion. But why, if I have this life that could allow me to go to the moon, do I settle for a cave? Why, when, David Goggins wrote the book Can't Hurt Me, there's one passage in there that just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm already well on my way into self-development, but it really, really struck me. He gets to the pearly gates, and Paul is there. It says, David Goggins. And he goes, present. And Paul or whoever's at the gate of heaven goes, Navy SEAL, best-selling author, ultramarathon runner, philanthropist, multimillionaire, this and that and the other thing. And then David Goggins goes, well, that's my name, but I didn't do any of those things. And then he goes, right, but I'm just telling you what you could have done. Boom. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, right? He had that revelation where he's like, I'm not doing enough with my life. And I think the saddest thing I see is when I hire somebody who has no belief system in themselves and caps themselves at the 1 foot mark. When in reality, if they were willing to put the effort in and develop themselves, they could do anything they put their mind to, We use money as a motivator, but it's only a partial motivator. What we really need is people to feel fulfilled is that when we look in the mirror, we respect the other person that we see and that we trust ourselves. We make commitments to ourselves that we keep. And that revelation was like, holy shit, I'm going to be the guy sitting outside a 7-Eleven, smoking cigarettes, a drunk or an addict of some sort, looking at some kid who walks in there with his violin case and going, oh, when I was your age, I played the violin. I was really good at it or something like that. I don't ever want to be that man in any way. And that realization that if I kept on the path that I was at, I would have just been the kid who had a lot of potential but never realized any of it, And that terrifies me more than anything else in the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For me, I think it started with middle school. There was a kid named Darius Gamble in 5th grade, and every day I walked into school, he would punch me in my face for 5 days straight for no reason. And on the 5th day, he punched me. And I said, this is the last time you're going to punch me. Next day we go in, he punches me again. I pick him up. I slam him on the table. It's the last day he punched me. And so I learned a lot about myself. One, I was a fighter and I wasn't going to stand up for shit. But two, I was a man of my word for myself. Not what anybody else says. I said I was going to do this. He did that and I did it. But my other dilemma was actually being in this school that was really bad. They were trailering people in on buses from Childs Park, which was a really bad area 20 years ago. And so these kids were absolutely out of control. So I had to develop a defense mechanism because I still had to go to school with these kids. They were jumping me, they were punching me, they were fighting me. There was a ton of racism going on back then. And so now I have to be like them. Now I have to be a chameleon and do what they do. And so now I'm stealing caps off cars. Now I'm going in the car. Now I'm getting arrested for petty theft. Now I'm drinking and smoking. Now I'm getting arrested for underage drinking. Now I'm getting into fights. Now I'm shoplifting on a big scale. Now I'm going to jail. Now I'm getting DUIs, another DUI. Now I'm going back to jail.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, why? Why? What is going on? And I have to look at these kids that I was hanging around. I was a product of my environment. I wasn't a bad kid. I was with the bad people. And this went on for years until I was 20 years old. And my life was a wreck. Nothing bad, nothing good could happen. Like so many bad things. I just kept getting knocked down until the last time when I went to jail. I didn't have to go, but I sent myself there for 21 days. And I'm sitting in there and I'm thinking about the life that I could have had, that I can have, and the life that I'm living. And I'm like, dude, that's it.
Yeah.
I lost my freedom for the last time. I'm an animal in a cage with real criminals, and I shouldn't be here. And so from that moment forward, and it really stemmed from losing my freedom and just waking up and like, dude, what are you doing?
It's crazy.
My whole life changed from that point on. Never did anything wrong again in my life.
I love that.
And stop with the alcohol. That's what it was. Because the alcohol was a demon comes out of you when you drink alcohol. And it makes 100%. You do foolish things.
Yeah, I was downtown St. Pete hanging out with, do you know who Dylan, I can never pronounce his last name. It's like Giddiotti. He used to come into Grassroots all the time, long blonde hair.
Yep.
I was hanging out with his ex-girlfriend and a couple of their friends and Robert, and then Robert went home. I stayed and was still partying. I was living down in Fort Myers at the time, but I was up here because I'd come up every weekend. And I don't know what happened. I didn't drink that much, but they handed me a beer. I never drink beer. I took a sip of it. An hour later, don't remember anything. Supposedly I called a couple of my friends and was talking to them while I was walking around trying to find my car. Walked up to Grassroots, remembered that I left my car down at Robert's house, so I booked it down there. And all I remember waking up at, I think it was 5 o'clock in the morning, an hour and a half away from St. Pete, 30 minutes from my house. And car was still in drive. I was up against one of the beams in a parking lot that have the blocks there. And I had a quarter tank of gas when I left. Now I only had 30 miles left. I have no idea what happened. Still don't remember anything to that day. So I'd say alcohol. Yeah, alcohol is.
Look, man, I believe these medicines are meant to be used sparingly, all of it. And you want to feel the vibration of that medicine, and you'll realize certain things. Like when I was super low vibration, it was the alcohol in the pot. Once you raise your vibration and you start to stop doing that shit, and you're meditating and you're living a pure life and you're working out and you're eating clean, right? And you're praying and you're doing all these things, you drink alcohol and you get bogged down. It's low vibration stuff. So the alcohol, we hate alcohol now. We don't drink it. It doesn't make us feel good.
Yeah.
Even the weed, any of that stuff, we don't do anything.
Yeah.
Love that.
It just doesn't sit well. It doesn't mesh with this vessel anymore like it used to when we were doing debauchery. You know?
Yeah, so Josh, I know you keep bringing up the Bible, God, stuff like that. How has the Bible kind of teachings and stuff that you've taken from there kind of been brought into how you run your business and your discipline? So
it's kind of crazy. I grew up super Catholic.
Same.
You know, my great Tim Columbus was the Pope. You know, that was he was my second grandpa. He was in the family, but married in. And so all my cousins, my family went to St. Pete Catholic, but then I went to Northside Christian for a year and converted to Christianity. And then 7th grade on all the way to high school, went to public school. But it's funny, I dated a Muslim, a Bosnian Muslim. And so I started reading the Quran. Religion never made sense to me. It never stuck with me. Kind of like what I have to see it to believe it and feel it. I've said some quotes and stuff from the Bible, but I'm not super religious in that sense. And so all of this starts to happen, right? And I'm reading the Quran, and then my mom, my great grandma was Jewish. And so my mother tells me this late in my 20s, and I have no idea. We weren't brought up like that. Like, my grandma was Portuguese. We didn't learn any Portuguese. All this stuff, we come from Ireland, and on my grandpa's side, and Wales and France, and so I'm confused about religion. I don't know where to go because I have a bar mitzvah, like all this crazy stuff goes down, and I'm feeling lost. And there's 4,200 religions, year to date. It's like, which one do you want to pick? But I'll tell you what, I was in Mexico, and I had planned a trip to Mexico. And I got to my destination, which was this place called Yachin Cenote in the middle of nowhere. And I get to Yachin Cenote, and nobody's there. And it's quiet. No one's there. There's 4 huts in the middle of nowhere, and nobody's there. There's no receptionist. I'm out in the boonies in Mexico. And I put my stuff down, and I just start hiking in the woods. And I was a couple miles in the forest, and I see this smoke coming out of the canopy. And I go towards the smoke. And as I get closer, I start to hear, hey, and there's music and there's noise. And so I go closer, and I see this big cutout patch in the forest. And I break through the trees, and the branches crack, and they stop. There's 5 Mexicans, and they turn around and they look at me and they go, come. And I'm like, me? Why are you here? The shaman, the woman, she was bilingual. No one else spoke English. She said, why are you here? I said, I don't know why I'm here, but I'm supposed to be here. I said, what is this? She said, this is a 4-step purification process that happens once every 5 years. I'm a Mayan shaman, one of the last. And so we get around the fire, and we're singing and we're chanting and we're doing all these prayers. There's like a sacrificial altar over here. We do this for about an hour, clothes off, everything's off. And it's time to go into the sweat lodge. And so I stumbled upon a 4-step purification process that happens once every 5 years. So yeah, we're doing some peyote. They've got some stuff there, but I'll tell you what, that process changed my life forever. And this was a more spiritual thing. There were 4 45-minute sessions, and 3 people almost died. They had to leave because it was so hot. And the funny thing was, each session there was a talk about the traumas and the demons and everything that we were dealing with, everything that I had been dealing with. I put it all on the table, and we were taking the medicine. We were screaming, we were chanting, we were hugging, we were crying on each other. I don't know these people. It was so powerful. And after that ceremony, she gets out. She's wearing this long white dress, and she lights this pathway with candles. She says, follow me. And we get to this cenote in the middle of the jungle, and she steps in, and she just starts floating. And her dress gets nice and big. And she says, come float with me. And we look up at the stars. And I said, wow, the water was 60 degrees. It was freezing cold. And point of this all is in that moment, I never felt so connected with myself and so calm and peace. I've never had the negative thoughts that I was dealing with when I was a child have never come up since then. And that is the real power. And so that's when I started to get into spirituality, because the more I know myself, the happier I am and the less I let things bother me, because I'm secure. Yes, I can have faith in God, but I have faith in myself, and I have to do the work every day. And we are God. God created us. We live within him. We're all atoms. We're all here on this earth. We just take a different shape and form. And it's all love at the end of the day.
Oh, dude, I love that. That's
crazy story, man.
That's a crazy story.
Beautiful
life. Experience.
Changed my life. You can't
like
plan for it or pay for it. That was completely random. And I did pray before I had that experience. And that's why it happened. Things show up in your life when you need it the most, also when you least expect it. Like, there's no coincidence that you are where you are. Everything that happens in your life is meant to be. And you need to be in the moment, because if you were supposed to be somewhere else or doing something else, you would be, but you're not. You're right here. So just do the best you can with what you have. And when the time is done, like, we're not going to be doing this forever. This is not going to a forever thing.
Yeah.
This is all temporary. It might be 5 years, 10 years. We don't know. Then we're going to be on to the next thing. People live their lives. They're going to go wherever they want to go and do whatever they do. Everything changes constantly. Always.
The only person that can handle what life is going to bring you the best way possible is the best version of you.
Yep.
Life's going to throw things at you, and people get anxiety about what's going to happen next, or how do I get through this? But when you realize and you're doing the work to make yourself the best version of yourself, you'll have an acknowledgement that there was nobody better prepared for that moment than you.
I love that.
Know? It's the people who are sleeping in, hungover, dealing with substance abuse problems, not bringing themselves to another level with personal development, that when life throws them obstacles, they're the ones that really struggle with it the most, because they're not ready. They're only on one foot.
Y'all have such a beautiful perspective on life. It's amazing to be able to connect with somebody that is just so grounded. And
life's great. Life's awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
Life's great.
So, like, if both of you could go back and give advice to yourself at the start of your entrepreneurial journey, like, what would that advice be?
If we could give advice, what would that be?
Believe in yourself sooner. Stop waiting for perfect scenarios to be the reason why you believe in yourself, because you can do anything you put your mind to. That's probably the only thing I could think of. But I really wouldn't change anything at this point in my professional career.
Yeah.
I needed that time. I needed those incubation periods. I needed some of that self-doubt and stuff before taking the jumps that inevitably led me here.
Yeah, just sometimes it's not about what you love to do. Sometimes you got to do what you have to do in that moment. But I would say just don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen. So many people told me, don't do this. You can't do that. My parents are scared. If the industry, everything's going Schedule 1, sell everything, you're going to be out of business. None of that happened, And if I would have listened to them, the conservatives, don't listen to the conservatives. I wouldn't be here today if I listened to those guys. We've always taken the risk. Big risk, little money, big reward if it hits.
Yep. It doesn't take any active genius for somebody to tell you how something's not going to work. It's way easier to look at somebody's goals and poke a hole in it and tell them that it can't be done.
That fear, dude, I have crippling fear, and I had crippling anxiety my whole life because of the way I was raised. And it's amazing. And he's pushed me. He's pushed me to get over this stuff. And don't let that stop you. If feel that fear and keep going. You have to push through when you don't want to do it. You have to push through and you have to do it anyways. That's courage. Doing the things that you want to do that scare you, that is courage. You have to have courage. It's the only way. And then you go, oh my God, it wasn't that bad after all.
Yeah.
And then you just keep leveling up every time.
It's like what David Goggins says, like you gotta shut your bitch voice up.
Took
That's
me
right.
forever to do. Yes. It crippled me my whole life up until 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So what do you both hope like listeners take away from your stories?
Well, first off, anybody who listens to this that's looking for a job, I hope they take my advice seriously and they start to pick up some hobbies that'll make them more well-rounded. You can have a shit personal life and you can have a shit professional life, but you better not have both at the same time. And pretty much what's going to guarantee that they both happen at the same time is an unbalanced relationship with substances. So when a person's hobbies are going out and getting high, getting drunk with their boys, right? Or going home and cracking open 6 beers, not only do I not want to hire you, but no one should want to hire you, okay? The people that will end up hiring you will make that mistake because you will one day be sitting at a bar with a beer in your hand talking about how you just lost a job and it's not your fault. No one ever tells you, well, Mike, I was actually the worst performing employee at my company. You know, that's why they let me go. They'll instead tell you, well, I didn't get the training I needed. My manager didn't like me, yada, 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 blah, 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 how it's not their fault. So, yeah, one big takeaway is pretty much everything we've talked about is self-development and getting yourself on the right track.
Yeah.
That's the ticket to success, whatever that might be for you. If you're not doing it, start. Where do you start?
Yeah.
Start anywhere. Start now. Paint a picture, learn a language, go for a walk, start biking, do something, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want good partners and you want to hire good people, you have to have some value there. You have to have a vehicle. And before that happens, like we said, you got to get your ego in check. You got to get your values in check. And you got to make sure that you have something to offer. Because until then, you're going to have blowouts with your partners. You're going to have fights with people. Things are going to go south quick.
Yeah.
So, hey, trial and error. Try it. Do it as many times as you can. If it fails, learn from it. Do it again. Fails, do it again. Just keep going.
Yep.
Excellence.
Yeah, look at it.
What was that?
I was just gonna say, I look at a lot of it like a relationship where if you're hiring someone or you wanted to bring on A players, you need to become the person that they actually want to work for.
Yep.
And by the way, like I say it all the time, I'm not shit. And I'll admit that I have a lot of work to do. I'm a fraction of the man who I'm going to be. Absolutely. You better believe that. We haven't gotten anywhere compared to where we're going. We're just getting started.
Yeah. So that what you just said, Mike, ties into this quote that I heard where it's like, excellence can work anywhere. They don't have to work with you or for you, but you want to make a culture that attracts them anyways. And then Matthew McConaughey in that one commencement speech, I don't know if you remember this, but he said, who is my role model? Me in 10 years.
Love
amazing.
That. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely amazing.
Great way to look at it.
Yeah, man.
Well, guys, it's been a pleasure having you on here. I've loved kind of digging into your guys' story because both of yours are just super unique, and it's just been a really great time.
Thanks for having us on, and let's do it again.
Of course.
Yeah, just let us know.
Where can people connect with you, learn more about the incredible work you're doing, and if they're looking for a job and they got hobbies and they want to come work for an amazing team, like where's the best place for them to come find y'all?
Hey, a good way to find me is our company website. My phone number's in the top left corner, pureinfinitybotanicals.com. I would say awesome. my Instagram is a good way to link up with me, but I've limited myself to literally 5 minutes a day, so I barely even open the app anymore. But
my Instagram is jsuther, SUTHER 26.
Perfect. And then I'll get the links and everything as well and put those in the description underneath the video. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you guys on here, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
All right. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.